Hey there, friends. Want to go over today's in-class work and show you some different things to look out for while you're solving proportions. So this first problem you may have solved by doing the butterfly method, going across here and then here to multiply. But what I want, and that's totally fine to do that, but I want you to recognize is that you can also take a look at these problems and notice that the denominator is the same in these two problems. When the denominator is the same, all you need to do is look at the numerator. So you can just set at 8 equal to 2x, divide both sides by 2, and you end up with x equals 4. Okay? Similarly here, if you had cross-multiplied, you would have ended up with a quadratic on this side. Again, perfectly fine, but a lot more work. But if you also notice, the denominators are the same, so I can just take a look at the numerators and set those equal to each other, subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals 2. So a lot less work when you do it that way. But that, again, is only when the denominators are the same. So teacher notes for this first one is if you look and you notice that you have the same denominator, we just need to set numerators equal. Okay? All right. Now, these do not have the same denominator, so your first thought might be to do cross multiplication again. Again, perfectly fine to do that. If you did, you would end up with 7 times x. Oops, sorry, wrong color there. That's not teacher notes. You could do 7 times x equals 28. Divide both sides by 7, and you end up with x equals 4. One other thing you can do, though, if you notice that if I just multiply this by 2 over 2, I would end up with the same denominator. So I would get 4 over 14 equals x over 14, or just x equals 4. Okay? So that's just another way to do it. Similarly here, cross multiplication would be fine. If I do cross multiplication, let's go through that one first. If I do cross multiplication with this one, I end up with x times x minus 1 equals 8x. So I get x squared minus x equals 8x. Bring the 8x over, and I get x squared minus 9x equals 0. Factor out the x, and then set each one equal to 0. So I end up with x equals 0, or I get x equals 9. Now, there's one problem with this. If I substitute x equals 0 back into the original equation, I'll have a 0 in the denominator, so that doesn't work. So what you need to recognize is this is something called an extraneous solution. That means it's extra. It doesn't work. So we cross that one off, and my only solution is 9. Now, let me show you a little bit easier way to do that. So if that's how you tackled it, that's totally fine. Let me show you an easier way to do it. I can recognize that my two denominators aren't exactly the same, but they're pretty close. So if I just multiplied the top and bottom by 2, I would end up with 8 over x equals x minus 1 over 2x. Sorry, I forgot to do the bottom by 2, so 2x on the bottom in the denominators for both of those. And now I have the same denominator, so I just set the numerators equal to each other. Add 1 to both sides, and I end up with 9 equals x. You'll probably notice that this method is a little bit easier. So take some teacher notes on this one. If you can rewrite denominators with common denominators. Okay? So if you have ones that are kind of similar, okay? Let's take a look at the next group. These don't look like fractions, but what we can do is we can rewrite them so that we put a 1 over both of those. And if we put a 1 over both of those, we can do our butterfly method or our cross multiplication. So I just end up with 12x equals 36, and I divide both sides by 12, and I end up with x equals 3. Okay? Here, I cross multiply. I end up with 3 times x plus 1 equals 15. 3x plus 3 equals 15. Subtract 3 from both sides, and I end up with 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by 3, and I end up with x equals 4. Now, some of you might have noticed that I could have, before I distributed here, if I had divided both sides by 3, I could have saved myself some work and not done the distribution. So I would have just ended up with x plus 1 equals 5 or x equals 4. So that could have been a little bit easier way to do that. Okay? And then these last ones, these are your challenge problems. So on this one, you want to end up with, on this side, you need to find a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this top one by 2 over 2. And then I just end up with 8 over 6 plus x over 6 equals 15 over 6. So why don't you pause the video if you struggled with that one and try to finish that one now. So now, if you solve this one, your denominators are all the same, so you just end up with 8 plus x equals 15. Subtract 8 from both sides, and you just end up with x equals 7. Okay? So similarly here, this one, if I were to, I have the 2x here, so this one just needs an x over x to get a common denominator, and then I can get rid of the denominators altogether. So I'm going to just skip a little bit of a step here. So I end up with x minus 2 plus 5. Oops, sorry, made a little mistake here. I don't want an x there, I want a 2. So scratch that. Let's go back and erase this. Sorry, I just had a little brain cloud there. So I'm just multiplying this by 2 over 2. So I end up with x minus 2 plus 10 equals 3x plus 4. And then I can go ahead and solve that one. So I end up with, combine my like terms, so I get x plus 8 on this side equals 3x plus 4. Bring the x over and bring the 4 over. So I end up with 2x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2, and I end up with x equals 2. All right, so let's take a look at the teacher notes now. So in order to solve these, here are some strategies for solving rational functions. Okay? So first strategy is to make all the denominators the same by multiplying by some form of 1, whether that's 2 over 2 or x over x. We get rid of the denominators by multiplying it. Another thing you can do is cross multiply the proportions, and then that's what we talked about the other day. Another thing you can sometimes do is factor to see if common factors and missing parts in the denominators. And you always want to make sure to check for extraneous solutions. So go ahead and give a try to the number 1. Pause the video and finish writing these notes out, and give a try to solving the rational equation below. And then I'll go over that. All right, so for this one, you wanted to use the butterfly method. So when you use the butterfly method, you ended up with 2x plus 4 times x equals 3x plus 2. multiplied that through, you factored it, you ended up with two factors. So I end up with 2x minus 3 equals 0, or x equals 3 halves. If I substitute that back in, it works fine. My other one is x plus 2 equals 0. If you substitute that back in, that's fine too, as x equals negative 2. All right, my friends, you don't need to worry about this next one. That's beyond our scope right now. You can look at this solution if you want. That's finding a lowest common denominator by multiplying by common factors. Again, we're not going to be doing problems like that. So give a go to the homework, and please upload your work that you did in class today. All right, thank you, my friends. Have a great day. Bye-bye.